So welcome to BelDoc's Q&A. We are speaking to Sam Ellison, director of the film Chèche, Lavi, or Looking for Life. The situation, this is your first feature documentary. And as I can see in the credits, it was quite a small team of people, which are from Mexico, from Haiti, from US. How did you get the crew? How did you gather all of them?
Yeah, it was, for this film, it was really a very natural process, bringing all the different personalities, people together. Because I really, like, from the very beginning, when I went to Tijuana and I was curious if there was a film to be made in this situation, I thought no matter what, the only way to do it correctly would be to have, you know, a team that made up all sides of this very specific intercultural mix. And so, you know, it had to be our producer, Rachel Cantav, who is also, she's Haitian American, and she's also an anthropologist, a professor. So she was like automatically on the team. And then our local filmmaker in Tijuana, Abraham Avila, he was like the first person I met who was recommended by several friends of friends. And he came on very early, and it was just sort of a natural process of a lot of talking before we started shooting. It took us a long time to find our two protagonists of the film, because, you know, we didn't want to just go out and make sort of a regular refugee portrait, which I think has been done very well many times. And it was about sort of like finding this like specific relationship to work with. And yeah, it was a very, very small crew of people who all had something in the film that they belonged to.
Yeah, and at the end, some kind of access to all these circles, let's say, of people. Yeah, usually when they, what we hear on the news, because here in Europe as well, I live near the border of Hungary. So there are like tens of thousands of people from Syria, from Afghanistan, from all Pakistan, from all around the world. So we are all familiar with this topic. And somehow there are always just numbers around, and what you did is really personalization of this immigrant story. And what you did, you showed this friendship. And I want to ask you about how did you get into characters? How did you find the characters, Robin and James? Especially the James, he's like a natural actor. He was born for this.
Yeah, he was the first person. I mean, he was the connection to Robin's. We basically found James just by hanging out on the street and talking with people. And, you know, we were looking for someone who wanted to make a film with us, and not just to like tell their story in a straightforward way. We wanted sort of an artistic partner. And James was on board immediately. He was very enthusiastic. And then he had this friend who was just sort of hanging around in the background at first, who was much quieter and who didn't really want to talk at the beginning, and that was Robbins. But of course, like, the more we got to know him and the more his voice became part of the film, I think you know, his personality and his soul really started to sing. And yeah, I mean, you know, the more we really didn't have an understanding of where the film was going when we started to shoot. And the more time went by, the more we realized that we were telling this very, very small story, sort of about a small loss that is set against this like much bigger geopolitical situation. But for all of us, it was like we were so much more interested in the little things that you lose when you go on a journey like this. And it just, you know, it felt more immediate, more real to me.
Yeah, what is also very characteristic in your film that this bond is quite emotional, and usually when you have male characters, especially in this kind of situation, you don't expect, especially with Robbins, who is kind of a very poetic character, and he's more or less you can feel the loss of his friend. I mean, when they separated at one point of the film, and then this emotion is very strong and not characteristic for the film. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
really made it brilliantly. And yeah. Was
Thank
it
you.
meant like this? And did you expect like this kind of bond between two of them after all the roads they passed?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely did not expect it. And when James disappears at the time in the film that you're talking about, that was for us while we were making it, we were like, oh shit, like this, I don't like, is there anything, can we continue? Like we thought the film was about them together in this place. And then we sort of had to rearrange everything that we were thinking about. And it became, a very different story. And yeah, the sort of the quiet and small emotional stuff is really the heart of it, because it's not even that they had such a long relationship, or like that they were best friends or anything like that. It was just that they happened to be in this place where they had, each other was the only person that they could rely on for this short period of time, where like in this place that they never intended to be in. And it was just sort of like all this very long accidents, but then here they are, and there's a certain kind of friendship that develops when you have no one else to um, support you, and that's what the relationship is really between those two guys. And it does sometimes feel emotional in a way that you don't expect a male friendship to be. But I think it's just such a weird, like, everything about the situation for them is so bizarre, and they're so isolated, especially linguistically. I think the other thing that we were fascinated by in the film is this like word soup of languages that develops, and like no one can really speak the other person's language that they're trying to talk to. And so it's sort of, that's something that I love about Tijuana, the place, as well, is it's just such a mixture of languages and different forces pushing and pulling from different directions. And that was something like that was a texture that we really wanted to make sure that we put in the film.
Yeah, this portrayal of Tijuana as this boiling point on the border is also brilliant, because you can see also how people easily get in touch, how they communicate easily, because they are like in the same sauce or the same soup, as you mentioned. Yeah. Also, yeah, there is this moment when Robbins is not calling, but saying probably on a secretary everything he has on his heart or soul to the James. Yeah, was it really happen? Was it did it happen really, or you made it for a film, like imaginary dialogue? Yeah.
And so we never scripted anything. Everything that they're saying to each other is real. But we did think a lot with James and with Robbins about what the scenes were that we wanted to film. So we like, in some ways we approached this project like using sort of a language, a visual language from fiction filmmaking. And so we would set up a scene knowing something about what was going to happen, what the words would be, but then we would just sort of let it go. And so that scene is an example. We were talking about whether Robbins had been able to contact James, and he had not. He had not heard from him. He'd been trying to write to him on WhatsApp and things like that. And so we decided to film a message, a voice message that he was leaving. And he really did leave the message, and that those, like, the words were his and the sentiment was his, but we did decide together, okay, now we're gonna do the scene where you call James. And so, and that, that was the way that we tended to work. We did not shoot a ton of footage. We weren't always rolling the camera. It was more sort of like a slower pace, like a patient kind of filmmaking, where we would talk a lot first and then think of something to shoot.
Yeah, and during the shooting or after, later, did James reply? Did they get in contact later, or?
Yeah, they got in contact very soon after we see him in Haiti. And they're still in touch, although, like, it's not this, they don't have the same friendship. It's not, they're completely separate again. And, one thing I should mention is that we stopped filming almost 2 years ago now. And both of them are still in the same places where we leave them in the movie. James is still at home in Haiti, and Robbins is still working in Tijuana, but he actually got married to a Mexican woman last year.
Ah, great.
Yeah, and so he's become part of that place. And he finally, about a month ago, got an official, some kind of like residence paperwork in Mexico. So there's no danger of him being deported anymore. So yeah, he never thought he would be in Tijuana, but now he's really living there.
Yeah, maybe he can go to United States as tourist at the end. You don't know.
I mean, that's a whole different question. But yeah,
yeah, the film is also very political. It addresses the new Trump administration. How are the reactions in United States on the film? Because you had the premiere there and the first screenings.
Yeah, I think the reactions here in the US are mostly the kinds of reactions that you would expect. I think, people who watch this kind of a movie might already tend to agree with some of the political claims we're making. But I think it was more interesting for us to see how the film was received in Mexico, because I think, and we've played several festivals down there, and a Mexican audience sees this movie as like a very different kind of story about the border and story about migration, because it doesn't sort of like sensationalize the whole process, and it's not. You don't see Tijuana as this like super dangerous, crazy, violent city. And so I think there's like another level of like political statement that we're making about the relationship between these two countries and this particular border. That is to say that it's not, while it is this place of like very heightened, experience, it's not a like nightmare disaster zone, and I think for some audiences in Mexico, they were refreshed to see that.
Yeah,
that meant something to us.
Yeah, I want to ask you, what are the plans with the film now? Because, well, it just started touring after the world premiere in Rotterdam. Then the COVID started. And did you have a chance to show it to the open audience, to live audience?
Yeah, we did. So Rotterdam was actually, the first time it screened was the beginning of 2019. So we did do a long run. And yeah, then COVID happened and then everything sort of went crazy. But we are releasing the film online sort of worldwide in, I think, 2 months. I think the release date is in the beginning of November.
Mhm.
But it will be, you know, it will be in sort of a wide release on streaming.
Yeah. Are you working on some new project also as a director now?
Yeah, I've actually been mostly working as a cinematographer in the last year or so. Just because my personal process for like generating new ideas is a little slow.
Slow.
So it takes me a while, but there are some ideas that I'm hoping to get started on this year. And I think if it wasn't for COVID and the way the world is right now, I think I would have started to work already. But you know, that's the way it is for everybody. I think, you know, this has been a tough time.
Maybe we come out much more the stronger at the end. Yeah, we should. Yeah,
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are limited with time, but also I want to thank you a lot. Thank you, Sam, and take care. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.